How's everybody doing tonight? Just getting started. Happy Tuesday. It's getting super close to Christmas. You see the thumbnail right there. So, talking about AWS, basically zero trust architecture. This 800-207. Move my big head out the way while we got people coming in. So, we're gonna get right into it. Give me a one in the chat if you can hear me. So we're gonna start. Shout out to Gail. Nice seeing you again, Gail, at night. Appreciate you. Just saw her on B2B where I was over there chopping it up with the young man. Really enjoyed that. So appreciate you. I am struggling this week. I need to get it together. So everybody knows I do government security. A lot on this. So we're gonna get into it. Once again, let a few people chime in. Long story short, I'm giving this tomorrow at a technology group. So I decided to get it here, test it out, see how everything goes. So, give me your feedback in the box. So we're gonna start into it. We probably go back and forth. So most people know me. That's a little bit about my background. For those of you who don't, once again, I'll probably go over it again, let a few people file in. But I always joke. You see, Professor Black, aka PBO. I took my first high school programming class in COBOL in 1984. So I've been in this game a very long time. I got my bachelor's degree in computer science in 1990. I got my MBA in 1995. Shout out to Keep It Techie. Shout out to Jerry. How to get into government security. Um, we can touch on that, especially why people filing in. Um, I worked at the state of Indiana as a consultant for 10 years. I probably stayed there too long. I was teaching community college at night at 4 7 years too. So been doing this game a long time. How I actually got into government security, and most people do, Jerry, is basically going through a consulting company. Long story short, I'm in Indiana. I worked for a small computer consulting company that had a government contract. They told me they had a government contract. Long story short, I was an Oracle DBA, which is kind of rare. So that's actually how I got into government work. Um, and part of that is when I was at DoD, I got trained in security. Two is, and we can delve into that a little bit, Jerry, is I do, and that's what this talk is about. If you do NIST, HIPAA, I do IRS, those type of security compliance. That's how I got in government security, doing GRC, governance, risk, and compliance. That's kind of one of the main parts of my channel. Jerry and I are actually going to do a video about how to get into governance, risk, compliance, which would talk about getting in government security. The big thing too, and we was talking about what channel? I was on another channel. Is you got to be able to pass a background check. That's one of the big deals. FBI fingerprint, NAC is a low level. People with top secret. Shout out to Keep It Tech. He used to have a clearance. I don't know if his clearance is still good. He definitely about that government work too. So once again, that's a little bit about me. Once again, you know how we do it. Put any tech or cybersecurity questions in the box. I might wait till the end, or I can answer them like I did Jerry's and pivot. Once again, GRC, governance, risk, and compliance. I actually do more IT auditing, Jerry. That's what I do. Make sure the agency or government division uh, can meet. It's called FISMA, which is DoD compliance. That's kind of one of my specialties. So that's how I actually got in the game. So let's keep rolling. So, what is an executive order? This is rare. President Biden did an executive order telling people to do zero trust, which you very rarely see, right? So you very rarely see a president. What's up, brother Michael? Talk about technology at a certain, even if it's a framework, right? There's a ton of ways to do zero trust, right? But President Biden put it in his executive order. You can Google it. That's super surprising because I don't think I've ever seen that. I don't look at a ton of executive orders. You usually see them coming from OMB or a large government agency. You very rarely see a president sign an executive order specifically talking about technology. Usually they talk about safeguard the data, protect the nation, maybe at a high level talk about encryption, but don't name the encryption type. AES, RSA, IDEA 3, DES 3, Blowfish, Twofish. There's a lot of encryptions, right? But I've very rarely seen a executive order from the White House that named the technology. So I took a couple of statements, of course, and put them in the document so we can talk about them. See at the top, federal government must adopt security practice, advance towards zero trust architecture to accelerate a movement to secure cloud services, including SaaS, IaaS, and PaaS, right? Develop a plan to implement zero trust architecture, which shall incorporate as appropriate migration steps to my favorite thing, National Institute of Standards and Technology within the Department of Commerce has outlined the standards and guide. Then my favorite one, CISA with Jen Easterly. Once again, migrate to zero trust architecture as practical. Shall modernize its current cybersecurity program, servicing capabilities to be fully functional with the cloud computing environment with zero trust. The zero trust architecture means a security model, a set of system design principles, and coordinated cybersecurity and system management strategies based on acknowledgement that threats exist both inside and outside of the network. So we're going to talk about what makes zero trust different, right? So there's threats inside and outside. So basically you saying you're hacked, so how do you still keep your data safe? When we deal more into zero trust. Once again, I very rarely see that in in an executive order where a president says we're gonna use a certain type of framework, right? So now Cisco's got zero trust, Juniper got zero trust, Oracle. We're gonna look a little bit at Cisco. We're gonna look a little bit at Duo with Cisco bought Duo. So we're gonna look at a few technologies to help you understand how to design zero trust and make it work for you. Right? We're not going to go into this easily too. It's not going to be a big bang where we're zero trust and we're going to spend $2 or $3 million, right? We're going to do it in phases, do it in steps so you can get to zero trust. But you got to remember, most organizations aren't starting from scratch. They have infrastructure running, programs running, technical debt they have to deal with. So zero trust is more of a program and an iteration, not a big bang theory. So once again, if you got any questions, just put them in the box. We'll get to them. So here's a couple guiding principles of zero trust. Verify explicitly. Always authenticate and authorize based on available data ports, including user's identity, location, device health, service or workload, data classification, and anomalies. Use least privilege accounts. Limit the use or access with just in time or just enough access. A risk-based adaptive policies and data protection to protect data and productivity. Assume a breach. Minimize blast radius for breaches and prevent lateral movement by segmenting access by network. User device, application awareness, verify all sessions are encrypted end to end. Use analytics to get visibility, drive threat detection, and improve defenses, right? So we're going to delve into each one, but let's hit it at the top. Verify explicitly. So when you're talking about verify, shout out to Tech G in the house. So go definitely check out Tech G. Definitely check out Keep It Techie. Definitely check out Gail at Night. So there's a lot of good content creators in here who I hang out with and respect. So, but once again, those are the three pillars. So, what do you mean by verify explicitly? So when you log into your PC, your workstation, or your phone, how do we know that's you, right? Is that a hacker? Is that a brute force attack? So how can we do that? Identify your location, right? I work in Indiana, Chicago, and the Midwest. If I'm hanging out with Tech G and I'm logging into Florida, that should pop up as being suspicious. Why is PBO in Florida, right? So I need to tell somebody in Florida. So now when you start charging stuff, your credit card call and say, is that really you in Vegas? So that's really what you should be doing in your technology. You should have location and device health. If your device is not upgraded to the proper malware, the proper virus protection, your device could be compromised. So if your health is not at a proper level, we're not letting you log into the network. Right, so that's how you verify explicitly. Then inside, we're going to talk about an AWS. AWS inside their SDK, they have tokens to let you know it's coming from our SDK. Right, so if somebody tries to fork that or do or hijack your session, they wouldn't have that token inside the traffic, so you would know it wasn't coming from AWS, right? So that's high level what verify explicitly means, right? Because we got to do something different, because I do a video every other day about everyday business getting hacked. Stanley Steamer got hacked. I'm like, who's hacking a carpet cleaning company? But they were hacked. The least privileges and just in time, right? So if I'm a DBA, shout out to Keep It Techie, I shouldn't be logging in as root as a Linux user, right? That's too many privileges. And I do argue a lot with developers because they want everything on a box so they can test their app. Nah, player, you just get least privileges. What do you need to do your job? Why is that? Because if that developer gets hacked and he has root that he doesn't need, he can take over the whole box, right? Then the just-in-time part too is if I'm doing DBA work or I'm doing admin work, I should get that access for that day or that 4 hours I'm using it. Then it should go away. So if a bad guy gets my account, he won't be able to do that type of work, aka DBA system admin, because I didn't say I need it for that day or that time of day, right? So now you're saying you only get what privileges you need, then you only need to get them for a certain time. And I'm gonna be honest, I've never seen anybody do that in real life. So that's why we're trying to get to it. That's why we're trying to go into it. I'm gonna check out. Have you ever seen that Tech G? I know Tech G doing stuff. Have you ever seen that Keep It Techie? I've never seen. I've seen least privileges. I've never seen it with just in time, where you would just check out your DBA privileges or your programming privileges just for 4 hours a day while you need it. I've never seen that in real life. We talked about it, and I've talked about trying to make that happen as a consultant, but I have yet to do an IT assessment where I've seen that done. The only time I've seen it is I looked at AWS's system security plan and Google's. They were doing it, right? Those are billion-dollar top 10 companies. I see a lot of small and regular companies, and I've never seen that in real life on point, even though we're trying to get there. Assume a breach. Minimize blast radius for breaches. Prevent lateral movement by segmenting access by network. Use the device application awareness. Verify all sessions are encrypted in the end. That's the big one. Use analytics to get visibility. Drive threat detection and improve defenses. And we're going to look at Cisco Duo. We're going to look at Windows Defenders. They have a lot of that built in. So the breach is if somebody's actually on my Linux box, right, and they're listening, if my traffic is encrypted from end to end, even though they're listening and looking at my traffic, if it's encrypted and they got the key, they can't read it, right? So that's what they mean. I'm assuming a breach, so I'm putting extra security to see if if anybody's on that box, they still wouldn't be able to look at my data, all right? So that's what we're trying to get to, that level of sophistication. Then two is shout out to Microsoft. They had a 3-tier form where we talk about traditional. That's where a lot of people are at. They're doing on-premise identity with static rules and single sign-on. They have limited visibility into the device and cloud environment and logins. They have a flat network infrastructure results in broad risk exposure, right? So I think we're getting away from that. I think people are getting the cloud. I think people are doing a 3-tier network, and we're going to look at one of those in AWS so we can see what that looks like. But most people are in the middle of traditional and advanced. All right. So what's advanced? Let me get my big head out the way. This stage of organization beginning to use zero trust. It's a hybrid identity, and fine-tuned access policies are gaining access to data, apps, and networks. Devices are registered and complement to IT security policies. Networks are being segmented, and cloud threat protection is in place. Analytics are starting to be used to access users' behaviors and proactive identities. So, what does that actually mean in the advanced? That means all your inventories in Archer, Spiceworks, or even spreadsheets, but you know all your devices, right? I work for big organizations. They can have 30 or 40,000 devices. Those are super hard to keep track of. But how do you secure what you don't what you don't know that you have, right? So that's the big part. Then the other that once again, network segmentation. So you have a application segment, you have a web application segment, and you have a database segment, right? So your web application, if somebody got on there, they still couldn't get to your database that has your social security number, driver's license, federal tax information, right? So in the old days, the bad guy could go right to your database and steal all your stuff. So you want to once again have network segments. Once again, like it says, you got to authenticate in each one of those. And a lot of times too, they have an admin segment that you have to VPN to, MFA into before you go work on a database, before you go work in a Linux and use it as root, right? Those are the levels of security. We need to start putting it in and make it more difficult for the bad guys. Right, so let's look at optimal. So optimal is cloud identity with the real-time analytics, dynamically gate access to application workloads and network. Data access decisions are governed by cloud security policy engines. Sharing is secure with encryption and tracking. Trust has been removed from the network entirely. Micro-segmentation and encryption are in place. And the big one is automated threat detection and response are is implemented. So what does that mean? That means you have a SIM. That means you're tracking all your movements. So if we get hacked, we can trace where the bad guy went so we can find him. So what happens when you start logging your stuff from your Cisco routers, from your app server, from your web server, from your database? That means we could track a user from coming into our infrastructure and architecture and going out. So we can see if somebody's trying to do a brute force attack, meaning they're doing a thousands hits on a username trying to guess the password, right? Trying to use a rainbow table, but you need to be logging in a SIM so you can track that information. That's what zero trust is about, right? Once again, you're authenticating different levels from your workstation. And we're going to dig into that. Your workstation, your session, and your individual user, right? Because once again, China's wearing us out, right? So that's why Biden did that executive order. And here we go. See, that's pre-zero trust. Device management isn't required. Single factor authentication. Capability to enforce strong identity exists, and data classification and information protection exists, right? So those two things did, and those couple capabilities. But when we do zero trust, these are the things we're putting into place. Verifying identity of person, strong identity, password eliminated in favor of biometrics, access to application and data is limited to the minimum required to perform your job function, right? Once again, that's least privilege. Then what's about your individual device? So we separate your identity from your device. What is your device health? Is your device unmanaged device and secure alternative access? Users don't have administrative permissions on your client devices, meaning you can't install all the software you want, right? And I get in arguments with developers about that. You can't have admin on your box. No, just spare facts. You can't have admin on your box, right? So when you want an application installed on your client, a lot of times you have to go through security. Now, a lot of times, if you're agile development, we'll just get it to developers. But a normal person, because if a hacker gets on your device, then they're dropping malware on your device, they're dropping ransomware as a service. If they don't have administrative privileges, they can't install those bad things on your client or your workstation or your laptop because they don't have the privilege to do it. Right? Verifying access. The internet is the default network in all Microsoft locations. Network segmentations are built based on roles and functions. We're going to talk about what does that mean. Usually it's a three-tier, meaning you just can't go straight to the database, meaning you need permission to get on those different VLANs or subnets. And a lot of times you don't have permission. The application you're using has permission, meaning if a bad guy takes control of your machine, they just can't move where they want to go. Shout out to Ty. Appreciate you for joining me. So those are the kind of the base from a user logging in server. From a zero trust, what are we trying to implement? Verifying your identity. Once again, biometrics, MFA. We're gonna dig into that. And two is your identity separate from your device, right? Is your device healthy? Is your device managed? Is your device in our inventory? Do we know what that MAC address is? Do we know what that location is? Right. And two is you don't get administrator rights. So you can just start wildly installing software in there. Shout out to my man for joining us, Aiken. So and two, we're gonna verify your access, right? We know the internet now because everybody works remotely, but when you come into our infrastructure, we have segments, we got VLANs, we got load balancers, we got application firewalls. All of those are getting validated. Oh, definitely federated. We're gonna get to that. You gotta have federated. Shout out to federated, which is SSO. That was in the last slide, but we're gonna get to that, Ty. That was a great thing. Definitely gotta be federated. But federated comes with its own cost because if you federate it and a bad guy gets that one password right, Ty, he can get into everything because it's federated, right? So there's pluses and minuses to federated. To be zero trust, you do need federated, but if you're an immature organization, I'll make you do username and password for every data store because if a bad guy gets your federated password, he can get to anything on your network, right? If you're immature, right? So and we're gonna definitely dig into that. And so once again, this is the user. Those are your devices. We're going to log in with MFA to get you started. The check is made to determine if the device meets all the criteria. We talked about that. So inside, this is Microsoft Azure. Microsoft Intune is used in a lot of places. So in Microsoft Intune, you can say, I need these conditions met before I let you log into our company cloud or our on-prem application, right? You see allowed access. Is it location, right? Are you in the right place? Am I in Indiana? Is your device the right device and it's up to date? So we know your risk, right? Are you the right user in the right application trying to log into on-premise or in the Azure cloud? If not, we're going to block your access. What risk does your device have if we don't have you up to date and you're not on the proper malware or even on the top proper Windows version, right? That makes your machine risky and you could be already compromised. So if your machine's not up to date, we might block you and tell you we need to push an update to your machine. And two is what exceptions to these risks will we let you on, right? So if the president's having issues, right, should we let him on? The answer is no, but a lot of times in real life, we know what that really is. So shout out to Game Over for joining us. So let's keep going once again. So what are we trying to do? When hackers get on your network, they usually try to go east and west, right, which is lateral. I mean, I'm going from the web VLAN. I'm trying to take over your Active Directory, which is down there. I'm trying to take over your Intune and cut off your malware. So where can a hacker go laterally where you wouldn't know, where you wouldn't notice, or they would cause you extreme harm? So that's what we try to do with those access conditions. So once again, I'm just going to hit these because we just talked about them. Once again, you want to have multi-factor authentication, eliminating passwords or actually pair them with somebody. Devices are managed and validated as healthy. Device health is a validation requirement. All devices and operating system must meet a required minimum health. Because if once again, if your device is not patched, that's a way for the bad guy to take it over and get on our network and do bad things. Telemetry is pervasive. Data and telemetries are used to understand the current state, identify gaps, and validate impacts. Controls, robust and standardized auditing, monitoring capabilities in core. Right. So inside AWS, I can figure out, does your architecture meet NIST? Does your architecture meet HIPAA? Are you logging the proper things you're supposed to do? Is your devices at a certain level? Are your applications updated? Right, because if your applications aren't updated, right, they have CVEs and vulnerability. And once again, least privileges, access and enforce. Limit access to only the application servers and infrastructure required to perform your job functions. Access to solution provide a broad access to networks without segmentation or scope to specific resources such as broad access. VPN must be eliminated. Just because you use VPN, I mean you get to go everywhere on the network, right? Just because you got it. You see that with a lot of new companies, small companies, or immature companies, right? So that's one of the things. Zero trust. Once again, this is a federal mandate coming from President Biden, which is super rare that they want government agencies and institutions to use them, and anybody doing work with the government, selling them a good or an API or a SaaS, they want you to be enforcing zero trust too. So that's why it's popular. That's why if you Google it, you will see a few jobs in Indeed, but a lot of times they just talk about federal security, which includes zero trust. Once again, if you got any questions, put them in the box. Let's look at this real quick. I thought this was a good video.
When it comes to cybersecurity, you need every available resource to keep your data safe and your manager off your back. Meet Brady. He's his company's cybersecurity administrator.
Shout out to Brady, man. Keep the managers off your back, man. I be feeling it, man. My manager be trying to get on PBO.
Threats keep hitting his endpoints, and he's ready for a better approach. He decides to onboard his machines to Windows Defender ATP. Once initiated, he sees through Windows Secure Score that many of the built-in security controls are not configured. He uses the provided recommendations to improve his security posture. He uses the centralized configuration in
So that's the cool thing. Once again, telemetry, all-knowing, so it tells you what your attack surface is. Once again, is your laptop, phone, or even workstation, do you have operating system security updates? What's your application, EDR, web protection, security updates, attack surface, right? So these are all the things it looks for that helps you out, right? So that's telemetry, right? It tells you what's wrong with your system. And two is there's too many systems, so you need some kind of AI, artificial intelligence, a lot of that's built in there to actually assist you with your network.
Microsoft Intune to customize the settings. After a few adjustments, the security score is at a safe level. Brady's manager alerts him to a new cyber threat that's compromising data centers worldwide. He quickly...
So if you saw that CVE, everybody should be doing vulnerability monitoring or checking those out, or you see them on the net. They usually give you a CVE number so you can track it and kind of figure out, is your infrastructure network or your servers, workstations vulnerable to that particular attack?
Jumps into action. He goes to his Windows Defender ATP Power BI report to see how exposed he is to this new threat. He looks for the specific CVE, and most machines have already received the emergency outbreak update. He sees that his Windows 10 machines have been updated, but some legacy machines have not received the emergency push. He configures his settings and updates the legacy machines.
That's BS. That's BS. The reason you can't do that, especially with legacy machines, and I work with a lot of legacy machines. Shout out to Keep It Tech It. You could break it. So you got to put it somewhere, test it, so you can make sure you're not breaking that legacy app. It sounds cool that you can randomly start pushing that, but if you break a system, I worked on an IRS system that got $34 billion. You break that system, you fired, right? So you definitely got to test. Shout out to Before the Billions. I was just on this platform. Go subscribe to him, doing big things. So yeah, so Before the Billions just got, he'll tell you, you just can't magically start patching apps, start patching servers, because you could break that app. And I've seen apps get broken, people get in trouble. So that's a little, I wouldn't say far-fetched, but you definitely got to put in a sandbox or a test area. So I'm going to wind that back a little bit. But yeah, you definitely got to test that.
When Brady meets with his management, he has nothing but good news and a high security score to report. Improve your security posture. Windows Defender ATP.
There's a lot of things about Windows I don't like. I don't think it's the most secure app, but they're getting better. They give you a lot of things to work with. So I dropped the link if anybody want to cover why we can do this together. So once again, I'm presenting tomorrow at a local group. So I just wanted to go through this. So let's see what he gets said. I can see him laughing. Let's see. I have disabled facts that Windows OS telemetry. They don't need them collecting more data on mine. They already do. Facts. And two, and that's one thing you have to be careful of. A can make a great point is the bad guys start cutting those off. So that's why a lot of times you want to push your logs, your telemetry to, I would say Splunk, but it costs $1 billion. Or shout out to Azure Log Analytics. So you get it off your network, push it in the cloud. So hopefully people like Aiken don't break it. Then two is, once again, you can look for brute force. You can look for TTPs, is how the Russians and stuff attacks you. So you can look for in the log to see if those type of attacks going on in your organization. Right. So that's kind of where that telemetry. But two is, when you do it right, you're looking at the Cisco routers, you're looking at Windows, you're looking at Oracle, you're looking at SQL Server, you're looking at the full infrastructure, because you want to be able to trace as that information comes into your organization and goes out. Because if the bad guys get it, try to send it to a command and control IP address, you have out that log, you have all that information logged. And hopefully with the Zero Trust Network, they wouldn't be able to get to the command and control web server in Russia or something. You would automatically block it. And we're going to get to that and talk and delve into a touch of networking. So we looked at the 3 levels, which was traditional, advanced, and optimal. We're going to look more about the advanced, and I'll probably do another video on how to get to the optimal. Let's see what people. Facts, they won't let you get access to production, let you prove yourself in the QA. Facts, because you got to test all that stuff. Like I said, I done broke a few things in production, man. And B2B tell you, man, you can be up all night, everybody's looking at you funny. Because if your code breaks and everybody's looking at you like, what did you do? You didn't test it. You're a horrible person. But let's keep going. So that's just part of the Zero Trust Network. And it's kind of at a high level. I really like this slide. So we're just going to peek at it real quick. No, we're at the left, the identities. We talked about that. Corporate device or unmanaged. I work in the federal. We very rarely have an unmanaged device. So we're going to have it on our Intune, our AWS, because we want to have an inventory so we know what all our devices are. Then two is, once again, multi-factor. At the top, identity provider, which is more of the SSO we was talking about. Shout out to Ty. User session and risk, device risk. Is it updated? Do we got the right OS? Do we got the right malware on it? Do we got the right Windows Defender so Aiken can't cut it off? No, shout out to him. Then two in a minute, we're going to talk about that. What's your policy? So what does that mean? So for my job function, these are the things I can get to as a security architect, which means basically I got reading everything and I can look at it. But if you're a security architect, what can you change? Shout out to B2B's pipeline engineer, data lake engineer. What should he need to do to be able to get to his job, right? So we know he's coding. We know he's looking in the database. He probably shouldn't have root on a box, though. So what those policy information is, what do you need to get into? Then on the back end, which devices should be able to get to what data, what apps, and what infrastructure. All right. If I'm in HR, I shouldn't be able to get to the dead pipeline. All right. So Once again, least privileges, and hopefully we give you those privileges just in time. Oh, shout out to my man Chris Whitlock. We always chopping it up in the Simply Cyber out this the first I forget. Team replay. Shout out to him. So I'm always over there. Let's see. I dropped the link. Let me redrop it. Can you drop the link again? It says, okay, let me see what's going on. It said it don't work, P2B. What's going on, man? I paid my bill. Let me know if that don't work, B2B. It should be. I paid my bill. So let's see. Yeah, check out the replay. That's the link. Let me know, B2B. So let's keep going. So, and two at the bottom, organizational policies in AWS, that's SCP. What can you do in a certain region? So if you're in a test region, I'm only going to let you spin up, teach cheap VMs, and I'm only going to let you work on certain infrastructure because I want to have a super high bill rate. What's up to B2B? Chime in on that testing, man. Chime in on that testing.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you crystal clear.
Yes, sir. I wanted to add on to your point about least privileges because the companies, the way that they make money is through their employees, but then it's also the biggest liability
Thanks.
is their employees. You can go in there and ruin a company by giving access to somebody who doesn't really need access. Somebody who was a janitor, I forgot which company it was, a janitor had access to get into some important part of the company, like the
Yeah.
information, and then they considered it a hack. Like it had some social engineering
Yeah.
that occurred, like a phishing email or a phone call. The employee gives the information
Yeah.
to somebody, and then they end up like losing like millions of people's information or giving out information to of millions of people's credit information, like what happened at Equifax.
Oh, facts. That's 100% true. They still
Mhm.
digging in for that and paying fines for that. They lost half the United States data because everybody goes through Equifax for loans and credit cards because, that's that back end stuff a lot of people are not aware of. Let me read a few of these B2Bs. I still hacking on Hack the Box. Shout out to Jupiter one times ice to give me great information. Make sure the password complex and off the chain facts at the over there with the multi-factor authentication. He's right. We'll make sure we got the complex password. Hopefully STIG. We're going 14, two upper, two lowers, two special characters, and two numbers. So definitely on that. Make sure you disable accounts when people opt for. That's one thing too. Is after 90 days, you should be deleting those accounts when people leave. We should definitely be doing audits of that and keeping track of that. So now you're 100% right. Let's see what else he got. Make sure people don't be downloading off the box. Now we talked about that previously. We're not going to give you admin on the box unless you're a developer or privileged account. So if you're just a
Mhm.
regular user of Juniper, you can't download no software, and we whitelisting all the software. So if you coming some out the box is gonna go in threat intelligence, and PBO gonna come to your desk and see you, Jupiter. We just ain't letting you download no crazy stuff. People employ. Yep, we got to have our security awareness training. That's definitely in there. I got a few NIST playlists, and we definitely talk about awareness training in there.
Yeah. Also, PB, I wanted to bring up too is that
Yeah.
even as a developer, you still don't have all the access a lot of the time. You have to have a need for the access.
Right.
Recently, I had to deal with my access being revoked because I wasn't using the virtual machine
Okay.
because I didn't have a need at that time to go into the virtual machine and make changes, but because we needed to make an upgrade, I needed to re-ask for access, and they told me no. I was like, "Oh, I'm a developer. I've had access previously. They took it away, because it was inactive. Because they also had to pay for those licenses as well." Corporation has
Facts.
paid for those licenses. They,
Right.
it's money just keep access a lot of the time.
No, 100%. Like you said, and I think people, which is better, they're pushing back on it. Like you said, if you don't need it, you don't need it, right? So that cuts your attack surface down because you don't have that extra VM, you don't have that extra software. Like you said, you don't need it. So, just real quick, I was talking about Cisco Duo. That's inexpensive. That's what I usually do when I lab. And in there, I have MFA set up. I've got my machine and device trust, adapted access policies, meaning I set up different users in my sandbox. Like B2B said, I got developer user, I have an admin user, and I have a DBA user because I'm trying to give those least privileges. So from a security standpoint, I'm comfortable doing that in AWS. And two, remote access. When you dialing in from your house, you have to VPN and what that looks like. And my man, I forgot who asked the federated question, but there you go right there. A single sign-on provides secure access to any app from a single dashboard that you require to have, and hopefully the time you need it to also. So that's what we're trying to get.
Yep.
Least privileges and just give you those privileges. It's called sudo on a Linux box. I sudo
Super
to
user
my,
do.
yep, I do sudo, do my work, then I get out. So if a hacker attacks my account, if they don't know how to sudo right, they couldn't elevate to the privilege I needed. Now we trying to say you only need sudo from 11 to 2. So even if the hacker got the sudo, it wouldn't work if they were trying to use it at night. So once again, trying
Hmm.
to get the time and the least privilege together.
Yep. And then in addition to that, I know for a lot of companies they have single sign-on, but then you also have to use a MFA as well.
Facts. You gotta have it. Single sign-on, especially MFA, because somebody had a VPN account, but they wasn't MFA, and I think it was one of those water, one of those water
Hmm.
divisions just got hacked. So you want to make sure, like we said, and we talk about this,
Yep.
it's multiple layers of security. It's not one. Like VPN with MFA, then if you're at a pipeline level like B2B or you got root, I might make you MFA and have a YubiKey, so you have three forms of security. You logging in your phone and have you having a YubiKey, right? My my
Yep.
my people think I be going overboard. Chime in on that B2B.
I think it's necessary because I know for a fact that I've had to, for example, I've had to sign on even to like do like HR related stuff, like turning in my time and stuff like that. I had to do single sign on and I had to do the text message.
Mm-hmm.
What do you call that?
I
It's
know what
also
you mean.
modified MFA,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. With the text though, I've seen it. I've
Yeah,
seen it.
and then I also had to sign in again using a different password into the actual website as well. So he had to do three different forms of logging in just to turn in like my time and stuff like that. And then for other things, when I need to be able to make changes within the database, I need to MFA using an authenticator.
Mm-hmm.
I had to use single sign-on, and then I had to be connected to a VPN.
Facts, man. That's that they doing it right. That's all I'm saying. They doing it right. Let me read a couple of
Mhm.
these real quick, baby. My man Christopher Will. I mean, based on the special report I did a couple of days ago, DoD, the government is getting away from proper access control. Yeah, I think that was for the vendors though, not actually for the DoD government, which is still a huge issue. So I need to dig in that a little more to see what's going on with DoD. I would also have documentation of screenshots of infrastructure, JCK incident. Yep, we're gonna look at that in a minute. Jupiter. I got the diagrams coming up. Defense in depth. Let me read this quick slide, B2B. Health devices, that what we talk about. You can't protect what you can't see. We want our devices managed so we know what devices we're trying to secure. Gaining visibility into devices, the first step in establishing device trust. It's essential to aspect to strong zero trust security. DO provides visibility into every single device on your network, enforces health checks at every single login attempt. So down here at the bottom, once again, your malware wasn't up to date, your Intune wasn't up to date, or your OS wasn't up to date. So we're not going to let you get into back end infrastructure until that happens. Right. So that's where we start
Yep.
talking more about the health of your your device. I don't see that a lot though, to be honest. Chime
Yeah,
in on
that
that,
actually
Peter.
that is so true. It happened to me before. Even just sign in. Hold on 1 second.
No, you good.
Yeah, so even to sign in to the VPN, you needed to have updated software
Yeah.
for the operating system. Um, you needed to have an active account, so you need to update your login information. So you had to update your password
Yeah.
every I forgot every 90 days or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So every 90 days you gotta create a new password, you
Yeah.
gotta update your operating system, and
Facts.
then in order to do like downloading different software, even to like do your job, you need to reach out to IT.
Facts. I like that. I like that.
Hmm.
So obviously y'all doing it right. Shout out to my man Juber. Yeah, two is I think this works hand in hand. Of course, on our vulnerability scan, we're gonna do our Nexus scan, do our patches, find our vulnerability. But right here at the screen you're looking at is Jupiter. If you were in the red, meaning you wasn't patching, you wouldn't be able to get into the back end of the infrastructure. See, that was end of life, somebody 3.5%. So if they don't upgrade their OS, they wouldn't be able to get. That's part of zero trust. If your patching is not up to date, they're not going to let you get to the good stuff, right? So do an analyze running of all your user devices, managed or unmanaged, without the user agent. The analysis of your user device, including current device OS, browser, flash, and Java version. The security health trends of all the devices, your business application, including which devices are outdated or needed. So once again, if you wasn't updated, you wouldn't be able to get to the back end. That's one of the cool things about zero trust. And two is zero trust. You can see what is available for $6. You get most of the good things you need to implement zero trust. So I did this for a video for smaller companies to make it more affordable, right? So $6 per user is not too bad, especially for a small company. So what level of security for the level of price? So that's what I was kind of showing there. But any application could do it. And once again, that's going to be your identities front end in that model. Once again, multi-factor checks your device, shows the risk of your device, shows you in your pane of glass what OSs or what has a CV or what hasn't been patched. Shout out to Jupiter. So that's kind of what we were looking at in that particular document. Just real quick, zero trust inside Amazon. We're gonna start touching on it. Amazon Cognito lets you do federation. So in there you can sign in, and part of the Cognito you get to do secure identity stores that scale up to millions. The user pool can be more easily set up without provisioning. All members of the user pool has a directory profile. And two, when you log out and you touch stuff, Cognito will let you know, are you going to a bad IP address? It actually checks your username and password to see if it's actually on the dark web too. Go ahead and chime in on that if you want to, B2B. I think B2B's out of pocket for a minute doing a few things, so I'll keep it rolling. See if any more questions in there. Now, shout out to Jupiter 1000 times ice. That was a good question. But once again, if you're not patched, you can't get in the back end with zero trust. So we kind of working those two together. And these specifically, right? Next is a little expensive, so you might go QualSys. And there's a couple open source ones out there. I need to look those up. I'm gonna do an all open source video for security, so you can do stuff super inexpensive. But he's right. I do a lot of work with the IRS and federal, and their scanner of choice is Nexus. So super familiar with that. Super familiar with that. Shout out
Yeah,
to Della.
it's so
Go.
important too. Also, Phoebe, I wanted to bring up. There's a few other flaws that I've noticed as
Mm-hmm.
well as time progressed. Is that uh, with extensions? I don't know if you ever had to deal with extensions like Google Chrome extensions before.
Yeah, we block them. Go ahead. Yeah, we
Yeah,
block.
because they don't trust Google Chrome extensions.
Fine. Well, like you
Yeah,
said, you could get them, but you got to go through security. We got to vet them. We got to figure out who create them. Then two is our legal staff now wants to put indemnifications in there, meaning if we get hacked, we suing you, even though you were an extension, but go ahead. So our legal
Yep.
staff, so when I worked at the state, they have big legal staff. So when they look at the extensions, they trying to figure out, do they have cyber insurance? What's our indemnification if you get hacked? So a lot of other things. But keep going on that, B2B.
Yep. In addition to that, there's a difference between PC and Mac.
Oh,
I've
facts.
noticed. I've noticed that with my PC, I used to be like, man, you can't do nothing on the PC. You got to sit up there and ask to get every single program on there. You got to do so much to be able to do anything on a PC. But then for a Mac, when you work at a company, you can download pretty much anything using a package manager.
Yeah, because it's not, and we argue about that. So we actually blocked, finally got our executive, because it's usually unmanaged because Windows Intune them, they don't, they're getting better. They don't know how to manage a Mac. So they really an unmanaged device, like you said, they kind of out there rogue. So
Yeah, and that's another because I noticed with a Mac, you can go and get Homebrew, and this is actually pretty interesting. So Homebrew allows you to download different brews or like pretty much like different software,
mm-hmm.
and you can put it just using a command through the iTerm or the terminal that you'll have on the MacBook. And what'll happen is you'll download it on there. They don't really have all the information about the security and
Right.
qualifications and stuff like that. You can download things that can make productivity a lot more, a lot more productive software. Like one of my favorite ones is Shifted,
Mm-hmm.
but you pretty much open it up yourself to download and leave yourself more vulnerable.
Facts. Way
And
vulnerable. That's
it make it real easy. Like all you got to do is just copy the code to download something, and then there you go. And
yeah,
they
fact.
don't have any like, oh, check yes if you want to do this and stuff like that. Like no, you just go straight to it.
Yeah, that's why we be blocking Macs. Facts. So that's the thing with Macs on a corporate network. I think we're getting better. I'm saying the whole industry with managing a Mac. But I remember when I was at the state 5 years ago, we struggled with trying to manage Macs. So we just blocked them. So we didn't have to worry about that issue that was coming down. Let me read this slide real quick, B2B. So once again, Amazon Cognito, I'm an Amazon guy. So Cognito, you can do users, authentication, and authorization. Like the video we looked at real quick, you could do Microsoft Active Directory, SAML, access control for AWS. You can define roles, map users to different roles, uh, resources that are authorized for each user. You can use attributes in identity to access management permission. So a lot of times the thing when you're doing a corporation, a role is all the permissions you need to do your job, right? So if you're a programmer, right, you get access to your environment, your sandbox, to your database. Or if you're HR, you just get access to the HR database, training, right? Once again, least privilege. So that role, when somebody comes in, you don't have to give people individual access rights. We throw them in the group HR, so we know it's already been tested, validated. So when that person comes in, we put them in that role. If they're help desk, we DBA. So you have those roles vetted out. Hopefully, least privileges, you're not giving too many access. Then you have the standard, Amazon Cognito has the standard identity access, OpenID Connect, OAuth, and SAML. That's what Facebook, LinkedIn, and all of one, they use part of those. Adaptive authentication, that's advanced
Yeah.
security and Cognos. It's adaptive to your application, helps your application users and accounts. As you see, you can use an SMS like a B2B was talking to send it to your phone. Or what we really want to do is give you a one-time password for the day to do your job. So a hacker would have
Mhm.
to rehack you. Then two is it looks and see if your credentials are being compromised once again on the dark web. That's what Amazon Cognito gives you. It's dirt cheap, and you can put your user authentications in there. You won't have to do it separately in your app. You can do it all inside Amazon. Once again,
Yeah.
I'm an
So
Amazon guy. Go ahead, B2B, chime in on that.
yeah, I wanted to add in too is that when we're talking about, I think really what it comes down to is social engineering. The only way they could get this kind of information from you is if you give it out.
Facts.
People give out so much information, like their phone number, birth date. They give out the name, and then I noticed that a lot of people get scammed with like trying to get a new job. They'll give out their social security number.
Oh yeah, they give it out, especially if they think they're gonna get a raise. They give it out facts, man. Which is crazy, but nah, you right.
hmm and then so even earlier today, I was walking through Walmart, and then they had some people. You know how like you go out to the back of the Walmart by the electronics section, and then they'll have people who will try to get you to sign up for like AT&T or something like that,
Yeah,
or whatever it is, and then they pass you an iPad. Oh, just put in your payment information.
yeah, which
Yeah,
is
oh, let
crazy.
me give you my credit card. Let me give you my credit card number. That way I can make a donation on your iPad. Like,
Yeah.
nah, let me not do that. Let me do it on my own phone if I'm going to pay for it. Let me make sure it's legitimate because you leave yourself open for social engineering by trusting others. You give out where you work, how much you make, what your credit card information is, just the thing that you're doing a good deed, like donating to somebody. Then now they got all your information.
Oh, facts, and like it's so common because, like you said, since they inside Walmart, people give them a level of trust because they think Walmart vetted them, right? And they work for a big company, so that's how you get social engineering. Let me read a couple of these in the chat. Shout out to Todd. Many believe Macs don't get virus. Humble is like app get for Ubuntu, 100%. Casual economist, a big video game studio just got hacked. They leaked company infos and games they were working on. I have to look that up. Appreciate you, Cal. Everybody's getting hacked. So let's see. Las Vegas College got hacked. Yeah, everybody getting hacked. B2B, what is an API? Should I be concerned at the tech desk support level? You want?
Okay. Yeah, an API, a programming interface.
Mm-hmm.
What it does is it allow really the easiest way to understand it is that it helps you translate and get information from a database and put it onto a website. So in order for a website to get the information from database, it needs to speak to a translator, which is the API.
Yeah.
And then that's how you're able to get your information when you sign in to Facebook. That's how you're able to see all this information on the website because um, it's generated. Like it's not a static website. A static website is like you'll just have all the information already up there and nothing changes. But a dynamic website is using APIs to get you in the information and is loaded on a web page. So that's what an API is. I don't think that an API should be um, concerned because that's the only way that you're able to get that information.
That's true. Shout out to Alpha Cyber. He actually has a free LinkedIn class talking about API security. So go check it out. There's some known hacks for APIs, people pushing stuff in the back end and steal your stuff. So he actually had a API security course free on LinkedIn. So shout out to him. So let's see. Let me keep reading that. Are we going? Shout out to correct. I had correct. I had a so-called hiring agency ask me for my SSN, say they got a job for me. You got to be careful, man. You got to be careful. So Junior was used, yep, for the hotel hack in Vegas. Shout out to Gil at Night. Please click the like button. So let's look at this quick slide I have in the back real quick. When we talk about policies, list in order for the most frequently used. A policy, once again, is a group of securities, that works in AWS. They got different ones. One of them is identity based. You can attach or manage it in line. It's basically user groups or which user belongs to what roles. Identity based. Resource based is the most common example. Our S3 bucket and a policy and AIM trust policy. Resource based policy grants permission to the principal. Principal is a person using it. The principal can be in the same account as the resource or in another account. Permission boundaries, manage policies, boundaries in an IAM and a role. So the boundaries said what level of permissions can you use inside of an account. Organizational CP is service control policy. It defines the maximum permission for account member of an organizational unit. So for SCP for organization is you can have a testing OU, and in there you can let them spin up VMs, but they're gonna be the small and cheap ones, right? You're not gonna let them spin up the Ford CPU $1,000 an hour VM, right? You're gonna let them spin up the smaller ones. So you could put organizational boundaries depending on the organizational unit. Then access control is which principals and other accounts can access the resources and ACLs and are similar to the resource bases. And session policies pass advanced session policies to your CLI or API to assume the role or federated user. So when I log in as an API, I can give them a session policy so I can treat my API with the user credentials it needs to do the job of that API. Insert it to a database, put a file in S3, you can give it the session policy. So when you connect for that particular session, it can do what it needs to do. Go ahead and chime in if you want to on that B2B.
Yeah, I completely agree with you about how important it is for companies to be able to look at the budgets and the quotas for their particular VMs and their software that they will be using.
Yeah.
Because I remember one time I looked at the budget, how much money we were spending on just using Google Cloud platform.
Yeah.
Man, I saw that thing. The quota was like a few $1 million or something like that per quarter. I said, "Oh my god!"
Yeah, you gotta watch them.
Yeah, you gotta watch it because and then that's another reason why they will revoke access to different things because they paying a lot of money when you really think about it for these licenses.
Yeah, and somebody could just maybe spinning up something that's too large, or they could accidentally spin some up, and you can easily burn 10,000 in a weekend if you get a big database and you got 2 or 3 regions running, and you actually spin up, 100 VMs because you didn't know what your workload was gonna do. You could burn up a lot of money quick. So that's why you set up that security control plan policy. So you can say you can only run this many VMs, you can only run this size database. You can only do X, and they need to do something bigger than that. Then they need to come and ask for it, right? That's something special. So no, so that's how.
I remember one time I had an issue where it was essentially like they wanted me to do a task, which is going through like 8 million of our clients or candidates, and so we had 8 million people we had to go through and update within the database. And then that was only for like one business unit. And then overall, it was like 20 million people or something like that that were going to get affected.
Yeah.
And this was a task that everybody knew about. I went ahead, worked on it. We said, hey, we're going to go ahead and do it in batches. Instead of doing all 20 million within a certain time frame, we're going to, spread it out over several weekends. And I tell you, we started off, we tried to do it. It tried to do 2 million people within a weekend or like 2 days. Man, that thing was packed for like a whole week.
Yeah.
It ruined everything, and we couldn't actually go forward with our production release, the next production release, because we were still working on that one database. It was very costly. It took a lot of time, and then we had to stop it. So we wasted the money pretty much and had to do it again.
Yeah, I've been there where you think something gonna take you start calculating like, man, this ain't gonna never finish. It's gonna finish in 4 days, man. I've
Yeah,
been
and
there.
it stopped us from doing it for like our regular business. And
Yeah.
we still need to process new people. We processing all the old folks.
No, I've been there before, man. So you got to figure it
Mhm.
out. Like I said, I work with this guy from Discover, so he showed me some new techniques. So I've been there before. I was like, yeah, how I'm doing it ain't gonna never finish. So let me read. And in that chart I was looking, threat intelligence, that's your SIM. That's how you keep, like you said, we were talking about that. How do you keep track of that? Uh, I can't even say it, telemetrics, so you can keep track of all your logging. So inside AWS's guard duty, it's continuously security monitoring service, analyze your processes from your VPC, which is your subnets, to your cloud trail, which is your API event logging. Once again, API calls, DNS logs, detection, intelligence feeds, signatures, anomaly detection, machine learning inside AWS. Guard Duty also helps you to protect your data in the S3 bucket, continuously monitors your profile for S3 data access events, usually referred to as the data plane and S3 configuration control plane, to detect suspicious activities. If you got hackers trying to get in there for certain IPs, detection include unusual geolocation, disabling of preventable controls in S3, an API call pattern, misconfigured bucket permissions. Full list of guard duty threat detections are there. Guard duty intelligence threat detection. You can fit it into CrowdStrike, Proofpoint, and other AWS security detection networks. API activities from known malicious IP addresses, domain. It uses machine learning to identify unknown, potentially unauthorized malicious activities within your AWS environment. So in that uh, graph I showed you, documentation, intelligent threat detections at the bottom. Once again, all your logs go in there and it reads through your logs. A lot of times with machine learning, artificial intelligence, because there's petabytes and millions of rows in your logs if you're a big company. So you can't do that manually. So GuardDuty helps you figure out what's going on. TTP, what kind of techniques and overseas people are attacking you. It knows what to look for in your logs and to alert you for that. So go ahead and chime in on that B2B if you want to.
Yeah, man. It's I've actually can you go back to the last slide?
Yeah, to the guard duty.
Yeah, because I've had to work with cloud. What is it? Cloud
Yep.
Strike
Let me
before,
let me get my big
and
head out the way. Yep. Cloud strike right there.
yeah, because
Yep.
you can't even connect to a VPN in certain cases, which is like this is how you work,
Yep.
and the only way to get the VPN is to go through IT.
Facts.
So
Facts.
so essentially, you can't do your job unless you have these threat detection, antivirus softwares on your actual computer,
Facts.
and
Facts.
or you have to be on the company's intranet, like like plugged in to a USB or something like that, or a port, in order to be able to sign in and do your work as well. So you had to go into the office.
Facts. Facts.
And what happens a lot of time too, if you're having issues getting connected to the VPN, they might tell you to go into the office.
Oh,
Um, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, you work
facts.
remote until you can't do your job.
Oh yeah, that's it. That's why you gotta make sure hopefully they're on top of it and they're mature organization. But no, that's the first thing they're gonna tell you come in because we can't be stopping production. So we're gonna have to get there some way or the other. So that's 100%. But yeah, that's the cool thing about AWS. They have a lot of third-party partners, CloudStrike, Proofpoint, Archer, a lot of SIMs are in there, so that so you can do your job. So if you have once again multiple, which most companies do, multiple security products, a lot of times AWS has integration in it to help you with them. So Splunk is the big one for the SIM. So their VPC flow logs, AWS, all that flow into Splunk. Then you can run techniques through your whole organization, your on-prem and in your cloud, because you really want pane of glass. Because usually you got a tunnel between those, and the hackers are going through the tunnel to attack you. So once again, you want to be able to see the visibility.
Can I add on to that,
Yeah,
PBL?
yeah.
Want to ask? I remember when I first started my first job, they were saying that they use Google
Mm-hmm.
because they don't like AWS simply because they because AWS uses third party companies
Mm-hmm. A
to
ton.
be able to do their job,
Mm-hmm.
but Google has more of internal tools, or
Yeah.
they'll buy up a company to
Yeah.
be able to use a similar tool, like they did with Firestore,
Yeah.
or Firebase and Firestore.
Yeah.
So, or Dataform is another one that they ended up buying. There's a lot of different products that they bought in order to put it to the Google Cloud Platform ecosystem.
Yeah.
Do you see that using third party companies as a security risk?
Yes and no. It's always a security risk, but I think how AWS gets around it is they use the big dogs that are already in the federal space. Splunk's already got federal attestation, federal certifications. Oracle's been in that space for a long time, and the government spent billions of dollars for their technology, so they just don't want to throw it away. So I think that's
Mm.
kind of the AWS brand. You're right, there's some risk, but I spent billions of dollars. I got billion workloads because Oracle really was the only big database for 20 years before the NoSQL came out and the Firestorms. And, those didn't get the federal encryption attestation that Oracle and SQL Server had. So originally, those were only two databases you could do for federal work. So since the government spent, I'm talking about billions of dollars on it, they didn't want to throw that away, B2B. So I think
Yeah,
that's one of the I guess upside to AWS. It integrated with all those already validated federal software and software vendors and the big guys that once again had those federal contracts. So the government
yeah.
actually liked that third party. Go ahead, buddy.
PBL. Let me also add on too is that sometimes, even from a developer standpoint, you'll have issues that will arise because of third party companies.
Oh, thanks.
Like you'll have a company go dark.
Right.
Cloudflare earlier this year, they had some issues, and they're like pretty much dealing with APIs or
Mm-hmm.
VPNs as well,
Mm-hmm.
VPNs and
Mm-hmm.
APIs.
Yeah.
And what happened is their API went down, and I noticed even for like things like at my company, it went down, and then also for other companies as well, it had the same error message. I
Mm-hmm.
was trying to I was trying to get rid of my security system and switch to another one. They couldn't even take me out of the membership to switch me over to something else
Yeah.
because Cloudflare was down.
Thanks.
And what happens is that from a company standpoint, their product that is dependent on third party companies, the people who use it, they only see, okay, well, this product is down,
Thanks.
and they lose faith
Mm-hmm.
in the actual product itself.
Thanks.
So they'll say, oh, such and such is this product is always down. This is always messing up.
Yeah.
Like Instagram always is down from for something, and it'll be like a third party company. It has nothing to do with the the actual developers. Nobody made any issues. Nobody messed up anything. It's just a third party doing like a maintenance, or they got something went over a limit or something like that. I remember one time we had like eight. It was like a whole bunch. Like all the users and all the candidates were affected by a company going down that we used the API for resumes,
Mm-hmm.
and the whole like nobody could get their resume, and it was like a huge issue that everybody needed to work on. But it's like nothing we can do. It's a third party company.
Thanks, man. That's what I do. I used to do on my job, B2B, and you're 100% right. But what we do is we vet the third party to say, okay, Do you have a disaster recovery site? What is your uptimes? Is that 5 nines, 7 nines? If we don't get that uptime, you got to pay us for our lost productivity. You're going to indemnify us. If you say your product is stuff, then you got to put some money behind that. What's your cybersecurity? Because if we go down long enough, we got 2 floors of lawyers. We're going to pull up on you, right? So those are the things we write in our contract, B2B, to make sure if our third party gets hacked, like you said, and our reputational risk gets damaged, you got to pay us for that, right? So we only deal with certain levels of companies, right? A lot of people deal with smaller APIs. If you don't have a disaster recovery, if you're not in AWS or Azure or Google, where we know, they got regions around the planet where you can automatically spin up, right? If they're part of the United States, you need to flow over to the East or West Coast. You need to be able to spin up. Once again, what's your uptime? What's your SLA, service level agreement? If you came back in it, we suing you. You got to pay us, right? So that's kind of when you get at a certain level, B2B. I think your contracts, and once again, I used to work with lawyers all day, and that's the stuff they put in our contracts. Because if we're going to do business with you and you say you're good and you have your DR and you have your FISMA, then you got to put some money behind that B2B for us. So
Yeah, it also happens with individuals as well, employees. If you work on something and then something goes down, you got to have a lessons learned and
all facts,
all
facts.
kind of stuff. You
Oh
might
yeah.
lose your job.
All facts, facts. So two is, and that's why you got to have a test sandbox, right? So a lot of times too, I blame the tester. I'm like, hey, the tester tested it. I thought we were good, right? I programmed it. The tester's supposed to come with those edge cases, right? I wouldn't blame her. I had a killer tester, but that's why you always got to have a test bed. And when I was at DoD, you better have your test plan in your cycle, because if you go left, they're gonna say, what was your test plan? Right? I had some go down and didn't go right, but it was like a some fluke. So, but my boss was like, I need to see your test plan. What you testing? What did the testers? I need to see their test plan, right? So,
Yeah.
what was your edge cases? And like you said, if something happened, everybody needs to take whatever happened was an edge case and make sure that's in your test plan now, so that it never happen again. And we know what we need to test for our environment, right? Because sometimes weird stuff do happen in your environment. So you need to be building up your automatic test suite and your automated test plan. And that's why you get mature like Facebook. They can test in just Brazil before they roll it out to the rest of the planet, right? And that's kind of where that, once again, that testing, your SLAs come up, your indemnifications come up from your legal staff, and it all plays together.
Yep. In addition to that, you also, it can also be something like you go in there, you test, and then when you go into production, it's just the pure amount of scale
All facts.
of what happens. It just takes too long. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you can't really test for 20 million users
Yeah,
in
but
QA.
that's not true, B2B. You can't, but you should be able to do 3 million and kind of get close. But you're right, sometimes at 20 million, you could be popping memory and all kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'm
But
saying, yeah, like for the extreme example.
yeah, but for us, we was a veteran team, so we know, okay, if we can't do 20 million in one process, we know we don't have that much memory. So a lot of times too, like I said, a guy from Discover, I didn't think about it. He tested a 3 million. And then like you said, I didn't know it was pegging. He got finished. He goes, dude, if we do 10, we ain't gonna have enough memory. It's gonna pop, right? It's gonna try to swap it to disk, and we ain't gonna never finish. He happened to look at that. And I learned from him. I'm like, I didn't check the memory. He said I ran, but when I looked at it, it was 97%. He said, there's no way we're gonna try to go from 3 to 5. Like you said, I think we had like 1 billion. He said he said we got a number one, we got a memory array to put in there. But that's kind of stuff like over time, B2B, you just kind of remember, okay. Or like you said, okay, I can only run 3 million in 6-hour increments, because that's all the memory we had on this machine. And that's one reason people like to go to the cloud, because you can spin up more memory, you can spin up bigger boxes, you can spin up, ginormous boxes, get that done and spin that box down and never need it again. Right. So that's
Yep.
kind of one thing
Yeah,
about going to the cloud. Go ahead,
yeah,
BB.
and then sometimes QA doesn't have the same amount of doesn't have the
Oh,
same
fuck.
amount of memory, doesn't run as fast. So it's
Yeah.
kind of like, okay, should we put the same limitations on production like we would QA as well? Because we know that production has like the most amount of memory put into
Right.
it, the most amount of speed and everything else that you could possibly have for this particular task that we want to do. So if QA it takes us about 6 hours to run everything, production actually should be faster, but you
Facts.
have so much more of
Mm-hmm.
a quantity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's like, yeah, you may be able to do the same thing, but then you may be limiting yourself on how fast you can get something done.
Oh, facts.
Because then you can say, oh, well, yeah, we can get that done based off of QA. It may
Mm-mm.
take us 6 hours,
Yeah.
and then in production, it may take you only 3 hours, but then you kind of limit it to six just to be
Well,
safe. And then for a company, we're trying to get things done as fast as possible. If
facts.
you see, like, for an example, you have a rollout, and what people always like to say is, um, the way it was explained to me is in terms of sports. If you're a football, you're a football fan, and you want to be able to go on to ESPN, and they say, hey, at 12 midnight, you're supposed to be able to order the package that comes up with the next season or something like that. So at 12 p.m. At midnight, or 12 a.m. midnight, you should be able to purchase that package. So what does
Facts.
that mean? It means that if you don't fulfill that, people are going to get upset.
Facts.
So let's say you have 2 million people who bought this package. Are you sitting here like, okay, they bought the package, but they got to wait 6 hours for it to go through?
Facts. And that's once again, that's one thing the cloud kind of helps you with, is because you
Hmm.
can spin up how many VMs you need. You can actually spin up databases on the fly and give them more memory on the fly, right? So that's kind of where the cloud helps you. But I think you brought in a great point. A lot of people don't realize. Once again, I was lucky to work at DoD. We did performance tests, right? So, like you said, okay, we're gonna try to run 5 million at night in production, right? Because we got our separate little space in there to see how the memory is gonna react, to see if you got enough disk space. Is the memory gonna try to flush the disk because there's not enough memory, right? Then it's not never gonna finish. Once again, we had a special box where our SD-RAM act like memory, which was quicker than regular disk, right? But once again, you got to do a performance test to shake that out. So let me read this quick question for both of us. Is it normal for a large organization to have serious migration server issues almost a month after cloud migration? It depends on the maturity of the organization. And a lot of times people just miss stuff. When we did ours, we got most of it. 5% we were struggling with it, right? Once again, it was legacy stuff that we thought would run a little different. and in AWS that didn't quite run well. So yeah, it's common. And you would hope it wouldn't be. Depends on too how much money you want to give AWS to use their consultants, which costs an arm and a leg. But it's not uncommon for really 3 or 6 months. Aiken. Hopefully, it's not a lot of issues, but you're gonna have some issues because when you go from on-prem to the cloud, especially if you're not rewriting it all to be cloud native, to really use the cloud to its best optimization, you're gonna have some issues, Aiken. So, what's your thoughts on that, B2B?
Yeah, I say it depends. I think,
Yeah.
yeah, just like how you say, it's not one of those it depends type of things
Yeah.
because it's not going to be the same per large organization or not.
Facts, facts. And a lot of organizations sometimes they got the best consultants and they got money. We actually one of the clients I had, we actually brought AWS on site to help us, right? So that
Hmm.
cuts down a lot of smaller companies or even like they don't want to spend that money, right? So
Yep.
they think they got that expertise in there, but so
Yeah,
you
let
know,
me let me explain something too as well about the cloud migrations because that's actually something I had to look into as a data engineer. Is I know AWS has it, and also I know that Google Cloud has it as well. Is that when you're doing cloud migrations of large amounts of data sets, what they'll do is they actually have like a truck. They'll
Oh
come
yeah,
into the company. They'll
facts.
come into the actual physical building.
Hmm.
Armed guards will
Yeah,
come with them,
I did a
and
video on
then
that. Go ahead. I did a video on
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Go
But
ahead.
it's true. I watched the tutorial
Yeah.
on how they go ahead and do it. And it goes by different names, but it's like the
Snowmobile.
transport. Hmm?
Yeah, it's called Snowmobile in AWS, but go ahead.
Yeah, I forgot the Google Cloud version of it, but it's
Yeah,
called something else, like the
yeah.
application transfer device or something like that. And like they have several briefcases,
Hmm.
several mini data sets, and then what they'll do is they go into your organization, they'll upload all your information from your servers and put it into their servers,
Hmm.
transport it back to Google data center, put it up to the cloud.
Yeah.
You can also that's how you would do it for large data
Hmm.
migrations,
Yeah.
and then that's if you're like all the way off premise, like you're not online, and then you can also do data migrations online as well. Um, if you have like a if you already have like a Google um, like you already have a Google or an Amazon product, you can also transfer information between the different products as well.
Yeah. Too, like you said, depend on the speed of your pipeline too, what you're running.
Hmm.
If you going straight to a Clack or a Verizon, straight to their data center, so you can do special pipes. But like you said, Amazon gives you a bunch of ways to move. But you're right, depending on the size of your pipe, the complexity, and how much data you got. Sometimes it's just better to call up their 18 wheeler and load it up so, with the security guards.
Yeah, that's actually a better way of doing it, more secure way,
Mhm.
because they actually have to have armed guards because data is money,
Facts, man.
and people may try and steal the information and stuff.
Yeah, yeah, I've seen, like I said, I've seen the tutorial on it, so it was kind of interesting. And once again, when I took my certifications, they were talking about the different levels of each one and kind of what was best to do for what scenario. So
Yeah, I think that's like the safest way of doing bringing offline, as they call it on in the Google Cloud
yeah.
platform way, offline information or data, and then
Hmm.
putting it into the cloud is through them doing it physically with their
Yeah.
application, no, with their what do you call it, the physical way of doing it.
Yeah. No, you're right. Let me read this slide real quick, B2B. So now we talk about micro-segmentation. We start talking about networking and some networking terms. So AWS provides capabilities and built-in security groups. That's their firewalls, their logical firewall. The key for successful implementation of a micro-segmentation is to understand and address micro-segmentation challenges. Enforcing micro-segmentation controls different applications with the same environment. A security group acts as a virtual firewall, controlling the traffic that allows it to reach and leave resources. For example, after you associate a security group with the EC2 instance, it controls inbound and outbound traffic, ingress and egress. When you create your VPC, which is your virtual networking, it becomes a default security group. You can create additional security groups for each VPC. You can associate a security group only with the resources in the VPC for which it was created. For each security group, you have rules that control base protocols and port numbers that are separate for rules for inbound and outbound traffic. So and if you look, that's kind of a picture of it. So they're coming in on your subnet. This could be your application over here in your firewall. So in your security group, your instances of your VM, what traffic are you going to allow over there? So since this is subnet one, a lot of times that's an application uh, subnet. So you would let in 80 for clear traffic, 443 for encryption traffic, since I do Apache, that would be 8080. Then also is Tomcat could be on there, and that's used for 8080. So in your security group, those are only ports and protocols you will let get to those instances, right? So somebody kind of come on there and do a SSH in there, that security group wouldn't let them get to that instance, right? It's not shown on the picture, but there would be a VPN subnet you would get into, and from that subnet you could work on your instances, right? But that would be a separate way in, a higher level of security. Once again, it would check your system, your OS, MFA, and VPN. Go ahead and chime in on that, B2B. I just want to hit that.
Yeah. This is pretty much how it works on my. I don't want to say it like that, but it pretty much works this way with our ecosystem as well.
Yeah, yeah, that's pretty. That's the standard. That's really standard
Hmm.
across. We talk about zero trust. The standard part is get a three-tier subnet with some firewalls or security group is the first group. So what ports you gonna let in? So yeah, that's pretty standard.
Hmm. What is the standard called? It's called Zero Trust.
Yeah, zero trust is really three-tier network is the standard setup architecture for a website. Zero trust is extra security, so you can't attack laterally. Meaning, I couldn't get on this particular subnet and laterally start attacking this subnet. So zero trust makes sure everything's tight, just in time, least privileges, right? To add a little more security layer on top of your infrastructure.
Hmm.
Let's see. Welcome, Nettie. She's joining there. Shout out to GMR. A little late, but always in there. Aiken, hopefully we answer your questions, but it depends on the org, but it's not uncommon to have some issues, especially from a big migration. Not uncommon. You would hope not, but definitely uncommon. So AWS Zero Trust, once again, AWS has a signature. So when you actually assign or do a web call, if you look at the bottom, you create a sign, you sign and you add signatures to your HTTP call or HTTPS call. So you see those extra infrastructures at the bottom. So when you sign in an AWS API request, every day, each and every AWS customers interacts confidently with secure AWS, making billions of AWS calls over a diverse set of public and private network. Each one of these signed API requests is individually authenticated and authorized for every single time at the rates of millions of requests per second globally. It uses the network level encryption, shout out to TLS, combined with powerful cryptographic capabilities. AWS Signature 4 secures requests without any regards to the trustworthiness of the underlying network. So basically, they're letting you know what you sign or you send is basically coming from AWS. And once again, it's a calculated signature in each request, so you know it's good and nobody's attacked it or did a man in the middle attack. So that's kind of what, and
Hmm.
AWS provides this to their developers too, so you can actually put it into your app to help the security at the network level. So chime in on that, B2B.
Yeah, man, that reminds me so much about the OAuth top 10 right there.
Yeah,
When you talk
that's
about
what.
man in the middle attacks and stuff like
Yeah,
that. Like when you join into a Wi-Fi signal, it is public, and then
yeah,
you end up just sending stuff to
yeah.
the website, and then you sending the information to them too.
Yeah, yeah. Like you said, you have a rogue API device. You think you connected to the right access point, and it's the hacker, and they just doing a man in the middle. So this is the
Yep.
picture of that. So you request a token. At the bottom, you go into AWS, you get the security token. You validated an AWS IAM, what's the identity access management. So it lets you know if that's token good or not. STS is their security terminal token service. So these are the service you would do to make that happen, right? So once again, it takes care of a lot of the OWASP top 10, and they kind of walk through how to set it up. I probably actually do a video on this particular thing, what they would look like if you use the AWS SDK, which is Java, PHP. They have all the standard things you can use in their SDK that'll give you this functionality to help you once again lock down your network and take care of the bad guys. Shout out to
Yes,
Chris for
sir.
straight cash. So this is the standard. What I was telling B2B is a three-tier inside AWS. So at the top, you got Route 53, your WAF, once again, is your web application firewall, which once again is going to help you with the OWASP top 10. You got your KMS keys, which was the encryption keys. CloudWatch, right? We need to telemetry. We logging everything. So we got the web tier. So when you first come in from your web application, you good. Hit your load balancer. You go your web tier, which could be IIS or Apache. Then you will flow down to your proxy tier, which means it's just once again testing your session, looking for the keys. Then you will flow down to your app tier, which once again could be IIS or Tomcat. I'm a Java guy. Then once you go there, your API goes to your Lambda, and at the bottom is your database. That could be Oracle, SQL Server, NoSQL, Cassandra. There's so many databases out there now. So that's kind of your standard 3-tier architecture, which is your web tier, your app tier, and your database. It puts the proxy tier in there. The new proxy tier evaluates all calls made between the web tier and the app tier to validate and to scrub your input. When we were just looking at this, that's what you put in your proxy tier to make sure that's happening, make sure it validates, and make sure your request is good and not coming from a bad guy. So this, once again, is your standard 3-tier. So if you're a AWS architect or you're a SRE, site reliability, this is how you set up your infrastructure. So it's called a well-architected AWS site or infrastructure. AWS says, this is what we recommend for you to do for a web app. And we kind of bless that for you, right? So this is their kind of, once again, their KMS is your security encryption keys. You want to be encrypted from the start all the way to the database, right? So every connection here is encrypted. It's using your KMS keys. All this stuff is getting logged, right? Your AWS shield is for brute force attacks that's coming to the web. If you're getting a billion hits and it's coming from the same, we're going to put AWS shield. So once again, this is just, so you could Google this. This is a well-architected AWS site. So me as a GRC person, or when I do IT auditing, I'm looking for something similar to this. If it's not that, I'm going to have a conversation with their architect or their CTO to figure out why they didn't do this and why they think their architecture is better than the blueprint of AWS. Chime in on that if you want some of that if you want some of that B2B.
Yeah, I'm learning something new, really. I didn't really know per se the standard. I just noticed that that's how it was set up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's standard. 3-tier been DoD been doing this for 20 years now. They added the extra proxy to validate the keys and make sure they put that signature in every request. So I think they added that layer. But the 3-tier, the 2 down here, they got the API gateway and Lambda, meaning when it goes to your database, it calls some security. It's calling other programs to check your OAuth to make sure you're not being attacked at the database level. So
This is really interesting because I'm trying to see. Do you have access to these slides? Kind of want to
yeah,
go over it a little bit as
yeah, they're
well.
mine. I got you. I think we're friends on LinkedIn. I can upload them to you on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I
I can
appreciate that.
I can do that for you. No problem. We can make that happen because I programmed for 20 years, so I've been a web DBA. So yeah. So 2 is when my AWS certificates I got, my certifications. They told me this is what Amazon, they call it well architecture, right? So once again, this is one of their top ones, and I can send you these slides. That'd be no problem.
Yeah, thank you for that, PBO.
No problem. So 2, let's keep going. Macy's is their fully managed data security and data privacy. It's basically used for their S3. It's called, I'm trying to think of the name of it inside Azure. I'll think of it. When you try to send out social security numbers or PII information out of S3 bucket, it's going to block it if it's not encrypted. So that means you're not sending it out in the proper format. Right. So what Macy does is in the S3 bucket, it's their blob storage. So a lot of times people come in, or I might send this out on an SFTP server. If Amazon Macy's can see it and discover it, it's gonna block it because it shouldn't be able to read it. That means you don't have it encrypted. Right. So that's kind of what Macy does, and that's pretty common. I'm trying to think of the term inside Azure. I just blank it out. I'm tired. So yeah. What is that? I'll think of it in a minute. So once again, following on what B2B was talking, this is the 3-tier architecture. We're going to look at certain points to make sure it's more secure. we attaching a MySQL using Amazon RDS. You want to protect your sensitive data, and you want to align your application security to they call it the security pillar of a well-architected framework. So if you look at the bottom, add a long story, what this is saying is that availability zone, the RDS MySQL can actually be attached straight through the internet. But what we're saying is this is going to be in our VPC inside of our infrastructure. You cannot go directly to our RDS without going through our infrastructure, meaning you got to go through a Route 53, our application load balancer. It all needs to be encrypted. We got to auto scaling before you get to our RDS database. Right.
Hey, PBO, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I've used mostly Google,
Yeah.
but this is Amazon. They have similar
Yeah.
products, and
Yep. Keep going. You going in and out a
I
little bit
wanted to
again.
I'm sorry about that. I wanted to go and see if EC2 instances are the same thing as Google Cloud Storage, which is like a blob
S3 is Google
server.
Cloud Storage. Up here is it's gonna be
S3.
to S3
Okay.
is the same as that for AWS.
Okay. So
I
what is the EC2?
EC2 is you spinning up Linux or Windows. That's
Oh,
their operating system.
okay. The VM.
Yeah, when you spin up, yeah, that's their VMs down here. So
Okay, makes
that's
sense.
that's why they got the auto scaling group. So I could say if
Mhm.
we get hit, spin up to 5 EC2s at a certain level with certain disk on it, right? Then two, if this availability goes down, because depending on the region, you can have 3 different data centers in a certain region. So this ALB automatically spin up to different data centers in that region. So you get automatically DR inside that at that region, and these data centers are usually at least 75 miles apart inside each of the AWS regions. So if you have a flood or earthquake, hopefully, though, it's going to be far enough apart where they wouldn't be affected.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So here we delving a little more, deploying the EC2 and RDS instance from the website and the database layers in a private subnet, encrypting the logging and source code in S3, encrypting the RDS instance and the standby replica, and encrypting the data in transit by using HTTPS, right? So these EC2s and stuff are in a private subnet, meaning you can't get to them from the internet. You have to go through the NAT gateway from the public, meaning that can touch the internet, but you cannot go straight to the EC2 from the internet. You always got to go through the NAT gateway. The NAT gateway has security on it, has a proxy server. It's going to hide your EC2 IP addresses. And once again, your S3 bucket in there, if somebody comes in there and steals your blocks on there, those blocks is telling you just got to be encrypted. And 2, at the bottom, you got your main and your replication. It's just telling your standby if your main goes down needs to be encrypted 2 at the database level. So that's
Yeah.
all. That's
So
why
it
you
has
see those
like
locks there. Go ahead. Go
yeah,
ahead.
so it has like failover.
Yep, that's the failover. So if this data center goes down, it fails over.
Really
Right.
good. Really good for some. Well, that's pretty much what cloud has. Like most of these cloud
Right.
services pretty much have a replication and redundancy.
Facts. And that's what you really pay. The cool thing is this could be the East Coast, and I could set this same thing on the West Coast. Then Route 53 will say, okay, if the East Coast go down, automatically send it over to the West Coast. Right.
Hmm.
So you can, if one part of the United States go down, then you can automatically roll up. Every
What?
3 or 4 years, a whole region goes down. It doesn't happen a lot, but then you just
Mm,
fell over to another region. Go ahead,
yeah,
BDB.
and I wanted to also add on because certain products within a cloud service also has different costs for
Facts.
this failover and replication. Like you have certain products that may be better for it. Like they may sacrifice availability,
Facts.
but they'll be able to uh, have failed over, but you may not also be as available. May have like 94% availability compared to like 99% availability for another product that does something similar.
Yeah, it's
or you
called.
may have a region.
Mhm,
It may be only good for like a specific region,
mhm.
as opposed to it being an international type of products,
Yeah,
depending on the cost.
yeah, that's cost. AWS has a ton of stuff, so you could do SQL Server and you could spin it up, right? But two
Mhm.
is since you're doing a replication, a lot of times the replication takes a little longer to come up. It's not automatic. Where if you use their Aurora SQL Server, it's automatically replicates data in every region. You have a backup copy. It keeps itself in sync, but that shit is expensive as hell.
It is super expensive. You know,
Yeah,
that's the exact thing Google Cloud has, which is Cloud SQL,
yeah,
which is the one where it has replication,
yeah,
but it's going to be more so for a specific region.
yeah.
And then you have Cloud Spanner, which is way more expensive, but also if it's just like how you explained is the replication happens pretty often and automatic.
Right, right.
Very expensive though.
Yeah, that's for AWS. It's called Aurora. They do MySQL, SQL Server, and I think they have an
Mhm.
Oracle version. But like you said, it's crazy. But two is that's the level of the classification of your data and how much data can you lose, right? That's when you need.
Mhm.
It's called a BIA, Business Impact Analysis. So those are the questions you ask the business, and you tell them there's a price for that. We can lose no minute of data, but it's gonna cost you, right? So what level are you putting on this data, and what level do you want to pay for, right?
Yep.
RT,
And
RTO, return of operations, RPO, point of operations, meaning how much data are you willing to lose?
also, I wanted to add on too, is that you'll have these products, and they'll pretty much will do pretty much the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
but they are for particular size of companies as well.
Facts,
A
facts.
smaller company usually would use like a cloud SQL because they wouldn't have international branches and stuff like that. Like they would only be in one region,
Facts.
right? Or maybe they have two. And they can maybe spin up another one in another region,
No,
but it still be. Hmm?
it's called a pilot. B2B. What I can do is I can spin up your whole company in one. What a pilot is in that other region,
Mhm.
I have one of each thing and it's small. So I have one VM, I have a super small database. But when it fails over, remember, I got the elastic. It's going to spin up to the size it needs, but it's a pilot in there. So when it spins over, it's going to take a while before it, spins up to 20 VMs and spin up my app server. But it's a one of each one. It's called a pilot. So it's super
Oh.
cheap. But once again, when that other size fell and it started getting traffic, remember the elastic said, okay, this server's 80% pegged, I need to spin up another one. So it
Hmm.
might take an hour to get to the size it needs, but it's super cheap. But it's we call it more of a warm site. It's there, it's warm, but it's gonna take a minute if you feel over. Where a lot of times most people have two hot regions, so they're doing part of the United States, so it's super fast. So if the other part goes down, it just all fails over to the new one. But that's super expensive because I got 50 VMs running in each one, right? So
Hmm.
there's a
It
couple
adds
ways to
up.
set that up. But go ahead. Let's just call it pilot.
Yeah, I didn't know about that because pilot sounds like like pilot light
That's what it's
instead.
called. It's a
Yep.
pilot light. I got
Hmm.
some slides. I'll send you that. I did the pilot light one too, I think. I'll find that and send it to you. But yeah, so
Yeah.
but now you're talking about an architecture. Now you're talking about CTOs and availability, RTO, return operations, RPO, SRE, site reliability engineering. When site goes down, reliability, how are you going to spin up? How quick is going to
Hmm.
spin it up? How much it's caused me? So now we getting into other job functions. But go ahead on that. Keep going. You
Yeah,
can
I agree. I think that we don't really talk about these types of things as often
no, no.
as we should because everybody's just saying the same type of roles, but there's so many other kind of roles that require specialties
Oh,
such as architecture. It is extremely um, in depth. Like I used to attend architecture meetings, some of the
mm-hmm.
most boring meetings I've ever
Oh,
attended, but I learned a lot.
oh, facts, facts.
And what they'll talk about is the architecture of a particular software,
Mm-hmm.
its its security risk,
Facts, facts.
its like, you know, the way that it actually gets the data from one place to the other. Like a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the things that we may take for granted have to be uh, really fleshed out by a board of people.
Yep. But the part of that too is, and that's kind of my job as a security person. That's why I try to be familiar with these architects, because as a security person, I at least got to have a high level understanding so I can ask the correct security questions from a GRC perspective to make sure guys aren't tricking me, right? I do. So from a security auditor, that's why I studied this, and that's kind of how I make my money. Is as an auditor, those are the question: is everything encrypted? Are we using KMS like we talked about? What's the RTO and RPO for certain, depending on a certain data from DoD? So from a security auditor slash security architect, that's why I need to understand that to ask those questions, B2B, from
Yep.
my side. Let me
And
hit this quick slide real quick. Let me
okay.
let me hit this. Strengthening your zero trust based security. Once again, that's why we were looking at the architect. We need to protect the network. We need to protect the data at risk. We need to protect the data in transit, and we need to protect the data in memory. As the data is running, you can dump memory, right, and see the data that's in memory. So those are the 4 areas you need to protect, and how are you going to protect them, and what's the best way to protect them? Keep going, B2B. What was you saying? I just wanted to...
Yeah, I wanted to add on is again the cost of things.
Mhm.
The EC2 instance. I remember one of my old coworkers spun up an EC2 instance. He had to pay $1,000.
Yeah, you gotta be careful, man. I got
Yeah.
my budget on, and so I got myself. If I go over 100, I get an email. So I'm trying to set some up. If it goes over 100, it just shuts down my whole VPC. So no, you gotta be careful. Cause shout out to my man. I know he's not here, so and he talked about it. Citizen Lou said he got a bill for 40 grand. He was young. He
Oh
just
my God.
somebody hacked him, so he proved that he hacked him. He said he wasn't gonna pay him. Shout out to I need to reach out to him and interview him, but I think he said it was like I think it was 40K. He was like, "Oh, I ain't paying that." So now you got to be careful. Let me read these
Yeah.
couple of chats real quick, before we
Hmm.
get back. My man Christopher Whitlock, my concern with AWS is being scared to run EC2 even while using it. I'm not a sysadmin. That's why you practice though. But now you're correct. Is our system admin uh, builds up these EC2s, which we call them the gold EC2s. So those are EC2s we put up in our auto scaling. So once they validate the EC2, when it gets to a certain level, it always spins up. The other thing too, Christopher, that's cool is if you go to AWS Marketplace, you could buy a FIPS or a NIST EC2 that's already been validated that you could pay for. It costs a little more because they did the security checks for you, and you can run it from there. But now that is a good thing. Since I've been a small sys admin, but now you're correct. You do need system admins uh, on staff to help you do that. So you should once again that's where I do my labbing, and it helps me with my sys admin skills with AWS. It's 75 miles part of standard for disaster recovery. And with this in a diagram, how do you confirm this properly to ensure zero trust? If you look up, and I've got that, Chris, and I can send that to you. That's actually in AWS literature, and they actually have a FedRAMP attestation. So I actually got that from them. They actually got it from DoD. So I'm making an assumption that they're doing it right. Because once again, you got to remember, the armed forces of the government just put out a $9 billion RFP for AWS, Azure, Google, and Oracle. So if they're trying to get 9 billion, I think they're getting these metrics right, Chris. But I can send you that link on AWS. So I don't know if it's a standard. I don't know if it's got it from DoD, but they will reference the DoD the policies and procedure. I need to go validate now. Does AWS have a system to test it? Yeah, because you can when we test, we just spin it up in a different region. Like me and B2B, we put their system control policy over so people can't start spinning up wild, expensive stuff, and then we assume that the architect is going to test their design. The programmer is going to test their design. Shout out to the engineers like B2B. He's going to test his scripts over there. Hopefully probably at a smaller scale because we cheap, but that's all going to get tested. Hopefully in a different region, Chris. That's how we make that happen. Shout out to my man. Hello to all. Let's see. Hey, is AES standard changing? I'm pretty sure I heard guys talking on that a couple weeks ago. Not to my knowledge. I think the only thing changing on AES, I think they're going from 128 to 254, which I think is too small. If I do AES, I'm gonna do 512. I think what the talk is, what I heard is they worried about quantum quantum computing, and AWS has some quantum computing now you can rent. So I think quantum computing with that speed they scared that's going to break AES security, even at the longer width of the key. That was my understanding on that, but I need to double check. Cloud security seems like a most remote role that I need to pivot from network engineering, headed to do overnight maintenance. Now, this is not it. Shout out to the my man. We definitely gonna have to go to lunch in the 317. But yeah, network engineers, man, y'all gotta be on site. Shout out to that. Now, shout out cloud security is definitely remote. I very rarely go in because I'm just viewing what people set up. Now, but shout out to the network engineers. Hopefully you get a good night's sleep. Chime in on if you want any of that, B2B.
Yeah, man. Because at least for data engineering, when we're talking about releases of new features and fixing new things within production, we have to do after hours, after
Facts.
working hours for
Facts.
both the East Coast and the West Coast.
That sucks, man. That
Yeah,
sucks.
so we had to wait until like 9 p.m. We
Yeah.
may not finish till 1 a.m. sometimes.
Oh, I've
So it
been there.
really just depends.
And
But
that's the
hey,
good.
PB,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
good PBO.
Well, that's why. Have you seen the A/B test in the blue and green, where you can spin it out to a certain test area and spin it out to a subset of your users before you spin it out to larger users with the A/B testing? That's kind of
Mm.
hot now. Facebook does it. Like they send it to a small company like Brazil and let it run for a month, and if it works good, then they can spin it out to the rest of the United States. So they can do an incremental test to larger and larger continents and states before they roll it out to the whole planet. So
That's
I'm
a
trying.
good point. I wish we had some kind of architecture like that.
Look at that's what you should start. Check it out to the A and B. I think I got. I'll send you some more slides. I did that. So yeah. So that's. But that's the top companies in the world are doing that A/B testing. And a big one is Netflix. They created their own tools to do it because their infrastructure and videos were so unique. They built their own A/B testing architecture to do that for Netflix. So I thought
Mm-hmm.
that was super interesting. Let me read this quick slide real quick.
Okay.
Protect the networks in default elastic beanstalk. That's what you do to automatically do Java code or C# code. You put it in there and it automatically run it in their container. The EC2 instances are deployed together with the application load balancer in a public subnet because that's your web tier. The EC2 instance did not need to directly be accessible for the internet. Therefore, you should be able to place it in a private subnet. They'll be the application load balancer should be left in the public subnet, provide a single entry point. Okay, I'd have put the EC2 in there, but I see where they're coming from external network and forward the traffic to the instance over the private network. The NAT, network address and translation gateway in the public subnet, as routing from the private subnet, where your instances are running in a NAT gateway. Your instance can then send requests to the internet and receive corresponding reports to the NAT gateway. And that's what it looks like, right? Your NAT gateways there. Your beanstalk with your Java or your C# or your ASP code goes in an instance. Then it connects to your database. See that beanstalk container right there handles your code and setting up your network, making it easier for you to use with one button click. Put your code in there, click on it. It'll build this whole infrastructure for you and deploy your code in there. Then you off and running. Go ahead and chime in on that B2B if you want.
Yeah, man. Well, I can't really add more to it because I think that that's how the standard is.
Yeah, it is. And people
Yeah,
do a
but
different way. They did their beanstalk. A lot of people have different like Jenkins and other
oh
code
yeah,
deployment. This is their kind of Jenkins all rolled into one, but a lot of people do the Jenkins separate to push the code out. Then also inside Jenkins, you can run your test suite to make sure everything's up and running and runs all your code, insert a couple records, make sure it's good. make sure it got in the database, check that to make sure those values are right. Then roll all that back and say you're ready for production. So
Yep, because I used to use Jenkins as well, and then I switched companies, and then I started using orchestration tools
okay, yeah,
within Google Cloud
facts,
to
facts,
be able to help to move that data. Really, really helpful, and then also since it's all on the cloud, it has to be reliable. I'll
facts.
say that. Yeah.
No,
But hey, PBO, I got to drop on off. It's already
okay.
11 over here, so I'm about
It's 11 over here. I'm struggling, so I get with you.
to.
I appreciate you joining me, though, man.
Yes, sir. I'll talk to you next time. Thank you so much, PBO, for having me up.
I appreciate you. Everybody go check out Before the Billions. He does a little everything, so check him out. We're gonna get him a little more focused on that code. We're gonna get some more get a little pipeline going. I appreciate you, B2B.
Yeah, I appreciate you as well. Talk to you later. Bye bye.
I'll talk to you later, buddy. So let's keep going. We're wrapping it up. So we're gonna protect the data at rest. Once again, recommending data at the rest. Well, Elastic Beanstalk does not encrypt data stored in the S3 bucket by default. So you should modify the default setup in your bucket. Similarly, when you set up an RDS directly through Elastic Beanstalk, you have to physically set up the encryption into the S3 bucket, which is the blob in the database, because we definitely want encryption at rest, right? So we definitely want to make that happen. I'll see you. Shout out to Chris. Thanks for sharing my. I had to catch up first 30 minutes. I missed. It's all good. I'll see you tomorrow in Osier stuff. I know y'all doing the classroom tomorrow, so I'll probably peek in there. Thanks for joining me. So let's keep going, people. I know it's late. If not, check the replay. We're gonna keep it going. So once again, we're just looking at the Elastic Beanstalk AWS deployment. Once again, you got your NAT gateway, you got your EC2s, which is your web deployment. I think for EC2, I'm a Java guy, they deploy Tomcat. I would actually like to put an Apache in the NAT gateway to add more security, but they using the NAT gateway. And once again, in a private subnet is your database, meaning if a hacker come, he will have to keep laterally moving to get to the MySQL database, making it a little harder than if he tried to steal the blocks of a MySQL. They would be encrypted and he couldn't read them without the keys, right? So data at rest, you see it. Data in transit, web traffic between the client and the ALB, internet using HTTPS rather than HTTP. We know HTTPS is 443 and is secure. It's your TLS transport layer security between the client and the traffic. The default setup is use HTTP. We know we're not doing that, so change it to HTTPS. How to enable it sit with the users, and HTTPS can be done with this TLS server certificate X509, the AWS certificate manager with the ALB support. TLS termination, which means that it takes care of encryption and decryption, and traffic communicates to the client, then forwards the traffic to the instance. Over. And we see it right there, the application load balancer. You see the HTTPS and HTTPS. So all the traffic here is encrypted to the EC2. The issue we have is from the EC2 to the MySQL database isn't encrypted. So we'd actually have to grab the certificate store, put another certificate that the instances could pull up to make sure the traffic is encrypted from the EC2 to the MySQL database, right? We want encryption from end to end, right? AWS, once again, we're talking about the RDS, which is the relational database. We're going to create its own security group in its own IP address inbound for the rules set for the database. Under the source column, make sure it's custom and select the search box next to it, because you want to associate the Elastic Beanstalk scaling group to the particular in-ground group of the database. As a security best practices, you should allow traffic to your RDS database from your instance only. Therefore, make sure the security group only allows traffic from the auto scaling security group, and that has no additional entries. So from that auto scaling group, these EC2 is going to have a certain IP range in each one of these areas. That IP range is the only thing we're going to let touch our RDS MySQL group, right? If we need to work on it, we're going to have another subnet that's going to have special access to get into the MySQL. But from this particular elastic scaling group, only the IP range for this particular availability zone can get to this RDS MySQL. Right. So if a hacker try to jump in from the ALB to get to the MySQL, it would be blocked. And if the EC2s try to get to another cross EC2, which is lateral, it'll be blocked because these EC2s are only going to get traffic from this ALB. Right. Trying to lock it down, least privileges, least attack surface that are in this electric balance. So let's keep rolling. About done. Once again, yeah, we looked at that. Once again, we basically just saying the inbound rules only from that particular auto scaling group. And that auto scaling group is the only one can get to the particular security group that's accessing the RDS, which in that picture was MySQL. Once again, this is a WordPress EC2 going to RDS private connection. So that shows you the security groups in there. From you can let an ICP and SSH get into this EC2, but that EC2 is the only one can get to that security group for that Amazon RDS. Right. So that's what, see, from that EC2 instance only can get to that Amazon RDS. Once again, we try to lock it down. So if a hacker gets in, he would have to specifically take over EC2 to get to our database that has our HIPAA, health, federal tax information. Right. So we try to lock it down as securely as possible. Once again, this just shows you the ALB encryption right there, HTTPS to HTTPS, connecting to the auto scaling group. We're actually going to start labbing this stuff so we can actually see the setup. Once again, we looked at the auto scaling infrastructure for a well-architected website. Got the web tier, app tier, then the database, the 3 tiers. We're adding a proxy tier so we can connect, once again, evaluate calls made between the web server and app server. Remember, we're putting that token in inside the AWS gets for that. So once again, that's all I got. I'm glad for everybody hung out. I kind of went a little longer than I anticipated. Let's see what my man Jim said. I joy like dropped early, but I plan to watch it. I don't spend any time on AWS. This is great info. Much I appreciate you, Jim Mark. Thanks for joining me. I'm gonna hang out for 5 more minutes in case anybody wants. Just check out the replay after to us. We're gonna dig down into this more and more. The crazy part is this was from traditional to the advanced. We haven't even got to the optimal, which talks more about internal networking inside AWS with application firewalls and what techniques can we do to make sure that traffic specifically going to a database or specifically going to a web server, specifically going to an app server. We can put the payload to make sure that payload is a proper payload to go to that EC2 for that particular job function, right? So that's when we got into the optimal and kind of what's that's going to look like. But that's probably going to be a separate AWS Zero Trust Architecture, digging in and getting to the in-depth parts of that. Once again, I'm out. Professor Black Ops, please subscribe. I'm tired too. Everybody have a good night. I appreciate everybody. Thanks for joining me. What's my man listening while I'm at work? Shout out to Brother Michael working, getting a little info, a few gems I'm trying to drop. Appreciate you, Brother Michael. Once again, I'm out. Professor Black Ops, please subscribe.